Welcome to Parc Ferm, the Canadian Formula One podcast.
Okay, welcome everybody back to Parc Ferm, the Canadian Formula One podcast. My name is Drew. We are here with Eddie and Tomas, and we have a number of things that we want to cover today before we get to the Australian Grand Prix. First up, let's talk about Carlos Sainz's recovery. Will he be back in the driver's seat, or is Ollie Bearman stepping in as he's already in Australia for the F2 race? Then we're going to talk about Ferrari's chase of Red Bull and Leclerc's performance in Jeddah. And that was shadowed a little bit by Ollie Bearman's debut, but it's definitely something we need to talk about. Audi is now making a big game-changing acquisition for Sauber in 2020. And I guess we're going to discuss who should sign with Audi and what their entrance into the F1 world is going to look like. Oscar Piastri and Danny Rick are both at their home race this weekend. We're going to talk about who's under more pressure and who is more likely to outperform their teammate this weekend. Since Albert Park is notorious for some red flags, we're going to be predicting the number of red flags that we have this weekend and who will be the guilty crashers. And lastly, we're going to discuss what went on last weekend in Jeddah with Nico Hulkenberg and K-Mag pulling an absolute strategy flex. And was that fair? Do we think that there should be some rule changes so that this doesn't happen in the future? But to start us off, let's talk about Carlos. And we briefly chatted before the podcast started about Carlos being better, but in full story, he did go under the knife, and he is recovering from a pretty serious surgery. So let's discuss that. What do you guys think about Carlos? Do you think he's going to be back in the seat this weekend, or do you think Ollie Bearman's going to be filling that seat for him?
I mean, we'll see after free practice. You know me about free practice, right? It's my favorite time of the race.
This guy. Yeah. You know what? And let's wait until after free practice and see who's sitting in there. Like, come on.
I mean, let's be fair. Let's be fair. I mean, Carlos Sainz, he is a really good driver, but he did go under the knife. Ollie Bearman, he did perform really well, so either which way, it's a win-win for Fred Vasseur and the Tifosi. So either which way, everyone's happy. But I will say, though, it's going to be good. But Thomas, how about you, man?
Like Ed said, win-win for all around, whether it's Mr. Carlos Sainz or Mr. Ollie Bearman. I do think, just personal opinion, I do think Carlos Sainz is going to be back in the car, just because last GP after surgery he was already basically in the pits watching the race live as it went on. So that tells me he recovered pretty fast and should be good to go. So I'm hoping we're gonna see him in the GP. But either way, no laws here. Both drivers are welcome. It's gonna be an interesting race.
I agree. I think the appendicitis is one of those things that happens all the time, and they got F1 money. So I'm sure they probably have the best surgeons on the planet taking care of this dude. That being said, I'm going to follow that up with another question based on the same thing. What would you rather have? Would you rather have a Carlos Sainz at 80% or an Ollie Bearman at 100?
Ollie.
Good question.
Ollie 100%.
I don't know.
Because
I'm
it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different for me. I would like to see some variation, so I'm gonna go with Ollie. I think that would be another very, very interesting race to see if Carlos Sainz sits out.
I'm on the other side of that, Tomas. Carlos Sainz just got a really good time at Jeddah at Mercedes. What is that? Convenience area. I guess having a meeting with our boy Toto Wolff. And if he had a little bit of an inkling that he might be joining this team, maybe he'll try to show up and show out for Australia. It's a fast track.
And for everyone not watching the video, Ed just pointed to his Mercedes hat being Carlos talking to Toto Wolff and insinuating that he's going to be joining Mercedes next year. While we have this quick moment, let's do a plug. If everyone that is listening to the podcast, if you like what you guys hear and this is something that you guys want to follow more often, we'd love the support. So if you guys want to jump into the Discord, that'd be awesome. If you can subscribe, share the podcast with all your F1 buddies, that would be fantastic. We have just debuted into the top 100 at number 79 in the Canadian News Sports podcast. So we are making a little bit of waves and moving forward a little bit, and we just want to spread the love a little bit further. So if you guys could do that, that would be fantastic. But let's get back to some F1 talk, because that's why everybody's here. Last weekend, everybody was taking a look at Ollie Bearman, and he was, obviously the man of the hour, so to speak, right? But realistically, Charles Leclerc was looking really nice and really fast in that Ferrari. And, I think of the top teams, he's definitely the one, taking Ferrari to that next level. What do you guys think about Ferrari making bigger leaps forward than, obviously McLaren and Mercedes right now? And where do you see Ferrari moving forward? Do you think that there's an ability for them to catch Red Bull at this point if they keep making improvements like they have already this year?
I mean, for improvements wise, we all know that they have the money, they have the expertise, they have the engineering backing for that. I think their main problem is reliability. They have the speed. We all know that. We know that they're a quali car. We all know that Leclerc is fast. But are they reliable? We won't know that until the actual race in itself. But I think that's their only crux. That's stopping them right now from really competing with Red Bull. And that, I think, once they get that done, then it's going to be a show. Tomas, what do you think?
Yeah, Ed, I agree with you. What you said, they have the money, they have the means to grab the talent if they so chose to. Do I see any more improvements this year? Yes, I believe. I think this is the track that they're. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a track they said I think they're gonna bring out the upgrades, or the first upgrades. I read somewhere. So that's gonna be interesting if that's the case. Second thing is I just wanted to touch up on is I'm not sure if this has been confirmed or anything, but I saw it on the news channels that Ferrari is talking to essentially Red Bull engineers and Red Bull team members on the internal part, even Adrian Newey. So it's getting really, really serious, and if they do end up snatching their top talent, that's going to be very, very interesting to. It's going to level the playing field. And then it's going to be really interesting to see how it stacks up against Red Bull. So they have a long way to go, but I think the improvement is definitely there, and I think they are going to reach it eventually.
I'm going to piggyback off both of your ideas, because I think you guys both hit the nail on the head. Ed, you were talking about them having the money and the time and the technicalities, and then Thomas, you brought up the fact that they have been speaking to some of the key people over at Red Bull, and I'm thinking that you're 100% right. I've heard all the same things, and I think that there's an opportunity, especially now that they have the spotlight with Lewis Hamilton coming in next year. And they clearly have a budget, because Ferrari just gets 50 million pounds a year just because they're Ferrari. And, they just have everything they need except for that, that extra talent, the Adrian Newey, the couple of those tech directors, all those things. And, if we look at someone like Aston Martin, what they did over the last few years was just buy the talent. And I think that if Ferrari does that same kind of move, I think that they have a really good shot at it. And if they are going to make that push at any point in time, now's the time to do it, because Lewis Hamilton's coming over, and I don't think they're going to want to disappoint him. He is at the end of his career, and I really think that there's a chance that they're going to do everything in their power to pull out all the stops to make that happen. And I think it's a smart play, because, not that, let's say it. Yeah, it's kind of boring watching Red Bull win it all the time. And if, I'm a Mercedes fanboy through and through, but if Ferrari can pull up their socks and make that happen, I'm into watching good F1 again. That's how I want to look at that. Okay, but enough about that. Let's kind of shift gears here a little bit and head over to Audi. And, Audi made a big announcement last week saying that they're no longer just going to buy 75% of the Sauber outfit going into 2026, that they are going to buy 100% of it, which changes a lot of things, right? Because now they have the choices and options that they didn't have when they only owned 75% or even 50%, as they were discussing. So let's figure out, what Audi should do. Obviously, our opinions on it, but if you guys had to pick two drivers for Audi 2026 to lead the charge and, kind of make their stamp on F1 going into, being a brand new works team, who would you pick as your top two drivers? I am going to make a caveat and say it can be anyone from the current F1 grid and from the current F2 grid. So you're not just pigeonholed to who's on the grid currently in F1. So, Ed, what do you got on this one? I can see your pondering face, and I like it. You're thinking hard.
Um,
And money's not an
honestly,
issue. They can pay whoever.
no,
whatever.
yeah, no, I know, but I'm thinking about it like what all the other drivers are thinking of right now, because you know what, I don't want to have it as a long-winded answer. I have a feeling that it's going to be Valtteri and Liam Lawson.
Okay.
So basically, I heard, and I was under the assumption, maybe it's still going to be true, that Valtteri is definitely going to be one of their drivers, and maybe, Carlos Sainz, something along that way. However, that is not my answer. If I were to choose personally, one of them would be Fernando Alonso going to Sauber, Audi Sauber. I think that'd be really interesting if he doesn't end up going to Mercedes or anywhere else, if it stays the way it is. But if that's not the case, then Liam Lawson and Ollie Bearman.
Liam Lawson and Ollie Bearman going with two rookies?
Yep.
Out of the gate, the blind leading the blind. I like it. Okay. You know what? With like 16 of the 20 contracts coming due at the end of this year, I can't remember the exact, but I'm pretty sure it's something ridiculous like that. There's going to be so many driver swaps internally with the teams we have now that I'd be very interested to see who's going to even be available for Audi 2026, because they have to be in that fight now, right? And I don't know for certain, but if they sign with Sauber, Kick F1, Stake Team, whatever the hell that shit is right now, if they sign up with them now into 2028, let's say hypothetically, does Audi have to just absorb whoever they pick, or are they going to get a free set of picks going into it? I guess it would be whoever that Sauber signed right now, right?
That would be my assumption as well. Yeah, unless there's some sort of clause or something, exit clause.
Yeah, and to me, if I had to pick a couple of drivers right now, to your point, Thomas, I think that, Valtteri Bottas had a shoe in there. That was talked about early days as soon as Audi was mentioned to being a works team. And, more recently, we've heard about Carlos Sainz. This was obviously before Mercedes had the open seat with Lewis, that it was Carlos Sainz and Valtteri Bottas. And I think those are great historic number two drivers, right? Neither one of those drivers have been the best in any way. And I think if Audi wants to make a splash, they either need to do what you did, Thomas, and go completely old school and take a Fernando Alonso, and then maybe pick that up by, picking up one of the young guns like a Liam Lawson or an Ollie Bearman, or, one of the new guys coming in, Fittipaldi, or what's that other kid's name, Ed?
I think it was Maloney or something.
Yeah, there's a couple of those young guns, and
Yeah.
There's a few options I think for them, but ultimately, the reality is that they need to start that fight now and figure out what that's going to look like going forward. And as a driver, if I turn that around, and if I'm a driver and I'm approached by Audi, I guess, my immediate reaction would be money talks. So I don't even care who I'm driving for, fucking pay me, that would be the first thing. But ultimately, let's assume that money is not an option, and they will be able to pay me. I don't know if I would go with that team. We just don't know what the reputation is going to be like yet. Audi's saying that they're going to be developing their own engine for the 2026 season. They're going to go full works team, and who knows what that's going to look like. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to have another Haas in play, or are we going to have like, something like an Alpha Tauri or something like that, or, Toro Rosso as they were at the time, so I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like. There's so many options and countless variables that we can't even name them all. Like realistically, there's no way. But let's put that one to bed. I want to move on to the fact that we're in Australia and we have a couple of the Aussie boys on deck this year. And Oscar Piastri and Danny Rick are both at their home race this weekend. I wanted to ask you, gentlemen, who do you think is under more pressure and who is more likely to outperform their teammate this weekend? We're going to start with you, Mr. Thomas. I'm going to give Ed his quick 2 minutes to think about this.
All right. This is actually an interesting question. At my heart, I want Danny Rick to fucking kill it. I want it. But in reality, I think Yuki is going to perform better than Danny Rick. Just because the way Daniel Rick has been performing lately, and I know it's only been like a couple races, but just from the first couple of indicators, I think Yuki's going to outperform him. For McLaren, that's a tough one, but I'm going to say Piastri's going to outperform Lando because it's Piastri in his home race. So I think that's it's just going to give that edge. You want to perform at your home race and you want to show off what you're capable of and be the best on the team. So those are my choices, Ed.
Okay, this is going to be out of left field, but stay with me on this one. I think Sergio Perez is going to perform. Why? Because the heat is off of him now. Everyone is now on Danny Rick. Like, what are you doing? You said you were going to perform. You said you're going to be a fantastic driver. We gave you the seat. What the hell is happening? So that's why I'm saying, like, Sergio Perez is going to perform because the heat is off of him now. It's now all on Danny Rick. And from the flip side of that coin, we don't know if Danny Rick is going to be the old honey badger that he was and, like, stick it to everyone else. Like, you know what? This is my home race. I'm going to prove to all of you guys why I have this seat. So we'll see again. But just like what you said, Tomas, I think he's going to shit the bed. I think it's going to be bye-bye Danny Rick. I think this is going to be another debris situation wherein when we get to the halfway point of the year, remember when I said at the start of the season, Sergio Perez might be on the way out halfway through the season 2024. I think I'm going to have to recant that, and I'm going to say that it's going to be our boy Danny Rick out of that seat. Liam Lawson coming back in after the halfway point. And that's how things are going to roll. As for Oscar Piastri, that kid he's on fire. That guy's going to kill it. 100%. Like, I am looking forward to how he will really perform this time around. Like, the McLaren has their issues with the car, but he's consistent. He kept a good race and a good battle between him and Lewis in Jeddah. So I'm so excited what will happen for the Australian Grand Prix. Drew?
You know what? Yeah, like, let's take this in two parts. Like, the first part is, let's look back at the last couple of years at, some of their drivers' home races. Like, look at Checo. That dude didn't even make it past the first corner in Mexico at his home race, and then you got Yuki in Japan, and like, he did terribly, absolutely awful. So like, I'm wondering is like, is the pressure just a little bit too much when they're at their home race? And, then you add the pressure of like, obviously Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris are like duking that out because I think they're both very well matched drivers. And then you have Yuki and Danny Rick, and like, in my opinion, not even in my opinion, if you just look at the stats, like, Danny Rick is underperforming. Like, Yuki is absolutely outdriving that guy on every track, every day, all the time. And I think the reality is I've kind of seen Danny Rick kind of slip into the McLaren kind of excuses, like, oh, like, I'm just not, tied up to the car as much, and I'm not feeling the last time we saw Danny Rick with any sort of success was in a Renault. Right. And the fact that I'm saying that is I'm sure there's some listeners on here that don't even know what color that car was. You know what I mean? It's been that long. And so Danny Rick hasn't really been at the top of his game in a long time. And I think just his marketability, his personality, and Helmut Marko really gravitated towards that. But, we all know that that Red Bull and Helmut Marko don't have any patience at all. And so the reality is once Helmut kind of made that publicly in the last couple of weeks that that Danny Rick's better shape up or ship out. I think that pressure is going to come down, and I think it's going to compound, with the fact that he's at his home race and he's got his friends and family around, and as a nice guy that I am, I really am rooting for him, and I really, really hope that he does well. But I think the reality is that he's not. I just really don't think he's been linked up with that car enough, and I don't think that this season has been the start that he needed. Let's hope that Danny Rick is able to turn that around, I think, and I would love to see him do well and get a little bit of attention, because I think him floating around in 17th place at the back of the grid is not something that he wants to do, and he's not getting the attention that he needs in order for his personality to come out. I think he's one of those guys that gets like that little bit of success and then it starts to snowball and he gets better and better, and like that momentum happens. But I think that, up until now at this point in time, like he just hasn't had any of that since he's been back into a Formula One seat in a big way. Let's move on to Oscar Piastri.
One more quickly. For in regards to the whole Danny Rick, I don't think, or I don't agree with what Ed said. I don't think he's gonna lose his seat halfway through the race. I still think he has a little bit of what we all talk marketability. However, I do strongly believe that this is like essentially his final year to prove it. Hey, like either perform or then essentially there's going to be no marketability left, and I think then they're going to have to make the tough call. So I think that's where he's headed.
You know what? 2 years ago, Thomas, I would have agreed with you wholeheartedly. I would have been like, yeah, for sure, he'll finish out the season. But after we saw the Nick Debris situation, they didn't even wait the whole season. They got 10 races in. It wasn't even half a season. And they were like, okay, bye, buddy. We screwed up. We called it.
Come on.
Get out of here.
Come on. Nick DeVries had a very punchable face, and not a lot of people like him. Danny Rick is a little bit different. Danny
Rick
have a punchable face, charisma around him.
And he did not have the marketability that Danny Rick has. I will give that to you. And you know what? After reviewing that, you sold me. I do think Danny Rick will make it to the end of the season, because I think they printed too many shirts with Danny Ricciardo on the back of that RB, and so they need to sell the shirts before they kick him out. Okay, moving on. So we're in Australia now. Albert Park has been notorious for some red flags, especially as of recent. Let's give your gentlemen's predictions on the number of red flags we're going to have this race, including like safety cars and virtual safety cars, and who do you think will be the guilty crashing parties? Thomas, this one's on you, bud.
Okay, for red flags, I'm gonna go with 2. I don't know why 2, but 2's in my mind. Two red flags. I'm gonna 2 red flags. Gonna have 4 virtual safety cars, and I'm gonna say 2 safety cars. And the person to first cause the crash, right? That was your question. Who's going to be like first one to cause it or something like that?
Yes, sir. Or culprits, because you have 2 red flags. So I'm assuming you need at least 2 people in order for these red flags to be caused. I could be wrong, but you know what? You might have 3 or 4 potentially in those red flags.
So I'm just trying to think logically, who could it be? It's hard to say since we don't know the starting grid, we don't know the starting order or anything. But first of them, I'm gonna go with my homeboy from the US of A, Mr. Logan Sargent is gonna be one of them for sure. I don't know if that's gonna be a red flag or a safety car or a virtual safety car, but I'm just gonna put his name towards all 3 of them. He's going to be the culprit of at least one of them for sure. No, I'm serious.
I think that's a pretty safe bet. That's a safe bet.
Yeah. The other 2, I'm going to say both Haas drivers.
Both Haas drivers? Okay.
Yeah, one or the other. Not sure who, but one of the Haas drivers is going to cause an incident. Well, I'm not going to say if it's red flag or virtual safety car, but they're going to be involved in an incident. That's my safe bet. And you know what? I'm going to add one more just for shits and giggles. I'm going to say Ocon, just because Ocon.
Esteban Ocon. Okay.
Taking everyone.
I know, right?
Jesus.
I know. He took all the usual suspects. I know.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah. So that just makes we have to be a little bit more creative, Ed.
yeah, I know. I guess I'm up, or are you up, Drew?
You're up. Let's go.
All right, I'm up. All right, so red flags, I'm gonna say, depending on the weather, red flags, 1 for dry, 3 for wet. Virtual safety car, or safety car rather, I would say 1 for the crash by Stroll, and then
Damn. We're Canadian F1 podcast, so you just go straight for Stroll. God damn.
Yeah. You know, Lance Stroll's our best shot at getting any sort of credibility here. You know that, right?
No, he's just shitting on the bed.
I know.
No, he's done. And then a repeat of last year, both Alpine drivers crashing into each other.
Okay.
So you already know. You already know, like, it's Stroll, Ocon, and Gasly. Those are my 3 drivers.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go with 2 safety cars. I think that that one of the Haas drivers, I think Kevin Magnussen, he is going to have a DNF, and I think that that's going to cause a safety car because of where that car gets parked. And I think as far as crashes are concerned, I think that I'm going to have to agree with Thomas on this one. I think Logan Sargent. This is a fast track, got some fast corners, and I think that Logan Sargent's going to bin it, or he's going to hit it in the wall at some point. And I just don't think he's there. I don't think he's experienced enough at Albert Park to be able to show up. So those are my predictions on that one. But while we are speaking of fast tracks, I did want to discuss, what kind of happened at the end of Jeddah, and we had Mr. Kevin Magnussen. Now, he got a couple of 10-second penalties, which are some of the new longer penalties that the FIA and the stewards have been enforcing. And these 10-second penalties, I've kind of been questioning, like, whether or not they're a good play or a bad play, because, what we learned is that, obviously Max Verstappen, when he's winning by 15, 20, 30 seconds a race, that the 5-second penalties weren't enough to kind of shake them or stop them from doing these things. So they came out with the 10-second penalties. Fantastic. In theory. The reality is, when you get somebody like Kevin Magnussen, who just, throws everything to the wind because he gets a couple of 10-second penalties, now his race is ruined. So now he knows, and, hats off to the new principal at Haas. He was able to kind of like make a game time decision and kind of just tell Kevin Magnussen to hold everybody back for Nico Hulkenberg, which allowed him to have a free pit stop. Now, I guess my question to you guys is, do you think that the rules need a tweak to kind of like, stop this from happening going forward? Or do you think that that's fair play, that, this is the new reality of F1, and since they have these penalties, what some of these, kind of back end teams and they're fighting for 1 point here, right? But that 1 point by the end of the season could be worth tens of millions of dollars, especially to these backmarker teams. So do you guys think going forward that these 10-second penalties are the answer, or should there be another solution? Or Ed, what do you got?
I think that's fair. Because, like, to address, which is a perfect point that you raised, the gap that Max Verstappen always brings out in every race now, it's average now, about 14 to 15 seconds. And that's average. So the 10-second will just kind of like close that gap just a little bit. But even at that point, it's probably not going to do anything. In terms of like holding back the pack, every single team has done this. Like, one highlight that I will want to mention is in the 2016 battle between Rosberg and Hamilton in the Yas Marina circuit in Abu Dhabi. Like, he was holding up Lewis Hamilton was holding up Rosberg so that Vettel can catch him, so that Hamilton will be able to win the championship. He never got any penalties for that. They let it through. It was racing per se, and things happen, and that's part of racing. Like it's team orders, it's team strategy. They want to get as much dollars, points, and whatever accolades that they can get after that. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is, and this is me just chiming into the 2021 incident, Michael Massey holding up the entire pack for our boy Max Verstappen, and having him win the championship. He lost his job, so who knows? Maybe FIA might do something about it. Just saying, not over it yet. Tomas.
Wow, Drew. To your points, great question. Short answer is I don't know. I think we need to see some more data, some more races to see exactly how it plays out. But to Max Verstappen, again, the 10-second penalty, 20-second penalty, it might not mean too much. It might equal the playing field for the other teams, which is great. But for the benchmarkers, like you said, it's shit. If you're, let's say ninth or 10th and you get a 20-second penalty or a 10-second penalty, you might be fucked essentially that race. Like you're not scoring any points potentially. So I don't know. I would like to see personally some sort of tweak. I don't know what that would be yet. Lots of ideas. But like I said, short answer is we just have to wait and see. And the reality is, as these new regulations, these engines, these cars are becoming so powerful and so fast, deep down, I think the 10-second penalty is going to be the new norm, just because where the technology of these cars are heading.
So I want to piggyback off that point, because I think you brought up a great point, like with these cars, because like these cars are big, they're wide, and they're heavy. And like for somebody like Kevin Magnussen to be able to hold back all of those drivers for that long, that Haas car is not good enough in theory to do that. Like, do you think that like it was a combination of like the fact that it was Jeddah and they were able to kind of like make themselves wide enough that nobody could pass? And like, do you think that the new regs should kind of tighten up the cars, dimensions a little bit and kind of bring back a little bit of smaller cars? Because like, we've been seeing this more and more that like, drivers are able to hold back an entire pack of, arguably faster cars for a long period of time. Like, do you guys think that, changing the dimensions on the car is probably a solution?
I would agree, because like remember back when they were racing in Baku in the previous car, there was a 3 stack for the back straight all the way down to the finish line. Like that was racing for me. That was fun to watch, because you don't know what could happen. Stroll got himself he lost a position at the very last, like what, 100 meters of the race
The boat
to, to both times. I'm like, come on, right? So that's racing for me. But like with Jeddah, I tried it on my sim. It's a very tight track if you don't get it right. That's why even if it feels like it's a wide track, but the way to get it right, it's almost like a straight line. It's almost as tight as Monaco. I mean, I could be reaching here, but again, to my understanding on how to take the lines, like that's my my personal opinion towards that. But yes, I agree with you. Like if we can make smaller cars, better racing. I mean, the ground effects have already done its course. Like you can now see how Red Bull has really pushed themselves to the stratosphere in terms of like their performance. But you do see second, third, and fourth, like the other teams still racing closely with each other. But yeah, a smaller car, a little bit more battles here and there. That I would love to see that again. Like
So
not just all max.
let me pose you guys another question then. Like, as far as some of the rule changes are concerned, like, would you think that some of the, like, if they forced a driver to take a 5-second pit stop penalty instead of just a time penalty at the end of the race, do you think that that would stop people from doing things like this? Like, do you think that would be a much more fair penalty to hand out? Because like if K-Mag did this, that would stop him from doing it. Instead of giving him 2 10-second penalties or 20 seconds in penalties, say like, listen, you have to pit again within like a short amount of time, like within the next 5 laps, you have to pit and you have to serve a 5-second penalty during that pit stop. Like, do you think that would be enough? Because now they've taken them off the track. They can't do any of this like holding up the pack thing. So that strategy would be out the window. Like, do you guys have any other solutions on what you think would work?
That would be a good solution, actually, because not only are you taking them out of the race, you're taking them out of contention. They're in the pits. They have to stop there for 5 seconds. Then they have to get out of the pits, stay on the pit limiter, and then have to deal with whoever is coming down the straights to negotiate to see if they're going to go ahead of that or behind that. I think that would be a really good way of just like deterring this type of strategy.
I think so.
Tomas,
too.
what do you
That-
think?
That to me was the best thing I could think of when I was originally coming up. Like, what is a solution then? Because I don't want to just come with problems. You know what I mean? You got to come up with some sort of solutions.
No,
What
I
do you got on that
agree.
one, Thomas?
I agree with you guys. Would I love to see smaller, smaller dimension cars? Oh, absolutely. I think that would bring some good racing, or at least we think so. The reality is, are we going to see? I don't think so. Just because of the whole safety standards and the halos and all that stuff, I don't see Formula One going smaller dimension cars as much as I would love to. In regards to the penalties, what Ed said, yeah, that would make sense. If someone's holding up the pack, bam, you have to stop, or as Drew said, you have to stop within 5 laps. You have to serve that 5-second penalty, and then you could go back. It would stop a lot of this bullshit and playing around, and I think it would make a lot more interesting racing. But then again, the whole other point is, teams could start to argue that's not fair. This is our strategy, and it could open up a whole another door and gray area into where this could go.
Cool. Yeah, I agree. You know what? Reflecting back, I think that, will Formula One make the cars smaller? I think if they do, it would be negligibly smaller. I don't think they're ever going to go back to like the early 2000s, late 90s kind of like it's not going to happen. But let's head back to Australia and Albert Park, because this weekend we have the Australian Grand Prix. We are going to be doing 58 laps there. We got a 5-kilometer race. I want to hear some predictions for you guys. Let's get on your poll 1, 2, 3. Let's go, Thomas.
So 1, I'm not even gonna say because we all know his name. 2, I'm gonna go with Chuckles LaBuckles. 3, I'm gonna say Piastri. 4, Leclerc.
I love that we do 4 because we just know that Max Verstappen's going to win. I love that. Like, if we have to guess 3, the first one's a given. Okay, Ed, what do you got for me, homeboy?
I would say, I'm going to be bold on this one. Piastri 2, Perez 3, Russell 4.
Okay. You think that the Mercedes is going to be up there? I like it. Okay. Let's go back to. Do we have? Yeah, we have to. Max is going to be number 1. I think Charles Leclerc is going to be number 2, and I would love to see Oscar Piastri in the number 3 position. And I think that I'm going to put Lando Norris on number 4. I think that whether Carlos Sainz is back or whether Ollie Bearman's in there, I don't think he's going to make that top 4 spot. It's just not going to happen. I think that that Charles Leclerc has the best shot at that. I think Sergio Perez is, to your point earlier, Ed, I think, Sergio Perez is, the pressure's off him. And now that all the eyeballs in all of Red Bull are taking a look at Danny Rick, I think that, not to go back to that again, but I think Danny Rick is absolutely going to implode over the pressure. Like, the wheels are just going to fall off that car physically, literally, metaphorically, every way that I can mean it. The tires are going to come off this weekend.
I hope you eat your words, Drew. I really hope you eat your words.
I actually do. I really hope that I have to eat my words, and I hope it tastes like anything delicious that they eat. What are they, yams or something like that? What do they eat over in Australia?
Vegemite.
Vegemite. That's that spread that goes over top of toast, right? It's
Yes.
kind of like the Australian Nutella.
Yeah, but it tastes horrible. I've tried it.
It looks like fucking sandpaper, dude. It looks absolutely awful.
Yeah, no.
Do you guys got any comments, any questions, anything you
Yes.
guys want to? Yes, you do. Okay. Let's
Yes.
go. Let's go, Thomas.
So first of all, a little bit of way back when we were talking about the car comparisons, I saw a post not too long ago. Anyone listening, to any of their listeners, Google RB1 compared to, like, I think RB18 or 19, and you're gonna see the size difference in the car, and it's insane. RB1 looks like a freaking toy car compared to what's out there. So I thought that was very, very interesting to see. And I forgot my second point, so that's all I have for now. Oh, second point. I want to give a shout out to my coworker Luke G. He's a fan of the podcast, so thank you for listening.
We always love to do that. We should do some shout outs for the listeners, man. I get
Yeah,
down
we
like
should.
that.
I
With
like
all the
that.
people in the Discord and stuff like that. I know that we got a couple of fans that listen very regularly, and we appreciate the loyalty in a big way. So let's wrap that up. I'd like to tell everyone again, if you are listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcast Music, wherever you get your podcast from, please like, subscribe, rate, leave a review. As long as it's a nice review. I don't want shitty reviews. You can keep those. But yeah, jump in the Discord. The link will be in the show notes. The Discord's a lot of fun. We got a lot of peeps in there that are really, into F1 as a sport, and we keep it pretty social with the with some memes and social medias and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of good race chat. And yeah, it's a spot to be. It's a spot to be. So yeah, that's it, man. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be back next week after the Australian Grand Prix with a little review on what happened, and we'll get ready for the next race.
Sounds good.
Mint.
Bye for now.
All right. Later, guys.